Welcome to the Michigan Golfer Show with your host, Bill Shelton. Join us each week as we explore the people, the places, and the events that shape our great game.
Welcome to this edition of the Michigan Golfer. For several shows, we've been talking about the Ryder Cup matches and the great competition between Great Britain earlier and the United States. We're going to continue that today and look at the decade of the 50s with the Ryder Cup. Again, we have Walter Hagen, the Hague, who has miraculously appeared to join us to give us some insight on the Ryder Cups. We start off 1951. The United States, the last two matches of the 40s had dominated. We come into the 50s, and right off the bat, you know, we're talking about the era of the 50s where there's television and there's a focus on sports and people like Jackie Robinson and all the Brooklyn Dodgers and all of this. Television had to be an exciting time for you as much as you enjoyed being in front of the people.
Absolutely, Bill. You know, the 50s was a great time for golf, and it was a great time for television. It spawned such stars as Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Jackie Gleason, all of whom I got a chance to meet and be with. And it also had a great show, Shell's Wonderful World of Golf with Gene Saracen. This really brought golf to the public in a much broader medium. It brought an immediacy to it. And we got a chance to speak with Al Barco and Marianne Saracen and hear it in their own words.
It was a groundbreaking program. It was the first, as you had mentioned, the first really big-time made-for-television golf, and it popularized the game. It popularized traveling to play golf around the world, and because we went to some pretty exotic places, which in the 1960s was pretty amazing, to play golf in Malaysia and places like that. And it was a good story, and it needed a history, and that's what we did.
Certainly, Shell's Wonderful World of Golf has made a revival today, Walter, and we're getting to enjoy it once again. Let's talk about the decade of the 50s. As we said, the United States continued to dominate the Ryder Cup. There'll actually be only one victory by the Brits during the entire decade. But the first match of the 50s was at Pinehurst. Pinehurst #2. Sam Snead, who, of course, was a prominent individual in the Ryder Cup, has said that's his favorite golf course in all the world. Well, it was pretty obvious that for the U.S. team, it indeed was. But a little something began to be added in addition to the competition on the golf course. They decided that the teams needed to have some other experiences during the Ryder Cup, and for the first time, they went somewhere else.
Well, that's right. They actually stopped the Ryder Cup. They suspended it in the middle of play, the first time ever and only. And that was when you're in North Carolina and you're a football fan, you have to stop everything to watch the North Carolina-Tennessee game. And so they did. So in the middle of the round, they stopped the game. The British and the American team went down and went in front of television and watched the game in which North Carolina trounced Tennessee 27-0. And then America trounced Britain.
Wild Bluff at Bay Mills, voted best golf course in the UP. Golf and gaming packages available from $89.
Well, and certainly they did, and Jimmy Demeritis was, he actually retired after the 51 matches, and he had an unblemished record that would be probably second only to yours, or maybe some would say it's 6-0-0. It was a little bit better than yours.
Well, unblemished, but surpassed definitely by my 7 wins. But we won't dabble in those things. He was a wonderful player, and certainly that 0 behind the 6 it looks mighty nice.
We went through the 53, went back to England 53, very competitive, but once again the United States team won. During that time, though, something had happened with Ben Hogan, and he was not visible during the 53 Ryder Cup.
Absolutely. Ben Hogan was arguably, and is arguably, one of the best 2 or 3 players ever to play. And tragically, in 1949, he suffered a car accident where his legs were severely injured. He wasn't able to play in a couple of the Ryder Cups, and then decided not to play after that. His legs were so injured that he couldn't play more than 36 holes at a time, and so he decided that the Ryder Cup was just too much of a strain on his legs. It was a shame that we lost him. It might have turned our fortune the next Ryder Cup.
Well, you know, in 55, we come back. We've got some people like Tommy Boat, Jack Burke Jr., Sam Snead, Doug Ford. So we're still hanging in there, and we're doing a very effective job. But then comes 1957, and the only time during the decade of the 50s that the Brits won the Ryder Cup. And there was a little bit of an unusual equipment change during that time.
The Brits were very serious about this time. A man by the name of Sir Stuart Goodwin had decided to lay down 10,000 pounds for the British team to try and get them up to speed with the Americans. And one thing they decided to do is they decided to ask that we change from our 1.68-inch size ball to the 1.62 diameter ball. And at the time we thought nothing about it, but certainly it had an effect. Nothing when you're hitting it, it had a certain different feel, and I know I've struck both balls before, and it can throw you off, and they certainly got the upper hand by doing that.
Well, they won that one, but then we bring them back the next year to play the 59 match here in the States, and supposedly, well, indeed it did happen, they were going to play at Palm Springs, but the travel, as was often the case in the Ryder Cups, becomes a story unto itself.
Absolutely. The British team was traveling from Los Angeles to Palm Springs by plane, and if you've ever traveled to Palm Springs, it's quite windy and can be quite bumpy. And at one point in time, they dropped from 12,000 feet to 9,000 feet in a matter of moments, and were forced to turn the plane around. And the Brits had enough. They took a bus to Palm Springs. So it unnerved them enough. But again, whatever advantage we could take, we would take.
Well, we won that one, but interestingly enough, the Brits had come across by ship to play here, but that was the last time they would use air travel for the rest of the flights back and forth, the rest of the journeys back to the States. So even though they had the scary plane ride, I guess. Now, the latter part of the 50s, you made some changes in your life. Tell us a little bit about what you did.
Well, I finally decided to move out to the Detroit area, to the Detroit Athletic Club. I decided to stay because Detroit was still a happening place to be. It was exciting and fun, and you know, I had been in Oakland Country Club there as the club pro, and it was a great place to be. I'd also released my book, my autobiography there, right back there for anyone who hasn't noticed quite yet. And it was just a wonderful place to be, and I later on moved to Cadillac, and also a great place to be.
Well, the decade of the 50s, again, following the war years of the 40s, the United States Ryder Cup team wins year or tournament after tournament, but the Brits would try something in the 60s and indeed the 70s and 80s, and in future editions of the Michigan Golfer, we're going to talk about what changes took place in the Ryder Cup over the next 3 decades. Thank you for watching the Michigan Golfer.